we're going down the home stretch here of the Gospel of Mark. It's the 25th Sunday after Pentecost. I can't believe this. And that means around the first Sunday in December, we're going to be having the first Sunday in Advent. We start a new reading cycle. What does that mean? That means Mark is done, and you need to start reading Luke and Acts for the next year. So Luke and Acts, okay? So let's keep plugging away at Mark here. Now, first of all, where is Jesus today? He's in the temple in Jerusalem. Remember, he's from Galilee, 75 miles to the north. He's now walked down to Jerusalem, and these are the last, several weeks of Jesus' life. The last words of a great person in the ancient world means you better pay attention to what they have to say. In other words, this is the crescendo of the end of all of his teaching. So he's in this temple, and he notices. He says there's a lot of scribes strutting around here. Well, what are scribes? In the ancient world, most people are illiterate. Like maybe 2% of the population at most can read and write. So people who can read and write hold a tremendous amount of power. And just think what writing does. You can take little squigglies on a piece of paper and you can transmit it across time and place. One of the reasons I like reading the Bible, there's documents in here that are 4,000 years old or even older. And I can read these, and those words bounce down throughout the centuries, and we can read these. Scribes hold a tremendous amount of power. The written document, the written word, Western civilization is based on this. So scribes, just by the fact that they have this magic power of literacy, they walk around and they wear long robes. That's their rank of office, not unlike the robe that I wear, right? Over my shorts because it's hot in here, right? so they wear long, impressive robes. And they get great respect in the marketplace. Not like me, when I go out to Tops, I get no respect. But in the old days, people who could read, scribes, religious experts, they were held in a high regard. And what do? They get the best seats in the synagogue. And I know what you were thinking. Oh, I'm Lutheran. The best seat in the synagogue is the back row where Cliff is sitting, right? No. In the ancient world, you want to sit up front like Robert so you can hear what's going on, okay? So the best seat is right here, okay? And they sit the place of honor at banquets. Yeah, right up in front next to the officials, right? Well, here's the problem. These people that strut around, these pompous donkeys, right? They strut around and what do? They devour widows' houses and so what's a widow? In the ancient world, a widow is a worst case scenario. Well, why is that? To this day, in the Middle East, women are closer to their sons than they are to their husbands. And if the husband dies and there's not a son in the picture, a woman without a male protector is helpless. There's no life insurance, there's no Social Security, there's no survivor's benefits. Basically, you're a worst case scenario. You have to resort to maybe begging in the street. So being a widow is the most helpless person in the ancient world. So what do these strong, powerful people do? They feed on the weak people. They use the technicalities of the law to milk the estate of everything that it's worth. So by the time the poor widow gets around to it, there's nothing left for her. So they use their power, they abuse their power, and they're supposed to be champions of justice. Remember, God is a God of justice and mercy, right? Well, they pervert justice to enrich themselves. Gee, things have never changed. Haven't changed, have they? One of the reasons I read the Bible is because it helps me understand the way the world works. People act this way, and shame on them. So Jesus' condemnation of these people back then, it still applies to people in power positions today, doesn't it? Right? So your position of power is a public trust, and you are a servant of the people, not the other way around. There's dangerous thinking here. We want to know, why did they crucify such a nice guy like Jesus? Because he said stuff like this in their face in the temple in Jerusalem. You see? He could have been a philosopher up in Galilee where he doesn't do any damage, but he comes down to Jerusalem and says it right to their face, right? So then what does he do? He goes to the temple treasury. Now what's that? The way we do it here, we have an offering plate, we pass it around, In the ancient world, as you come into the narthex, the temple precinct, they had these things that look kind of like trumpets. You know, you probably have seen these where you put a coin and it goes around and it drops in. You know, kids love that. Well, that's kind of a thing. You put it in, it makes noise going down. So, Jesus is watching them. Stop. Remember, when you read the Bible, there are subtle things in here. Jesus watched them. You mean he saw like we see? No, he's God. When he watches, he looks beyond the outward appearance and looks to the inside. He knows your thoughts and your intentions. So Jesus sits down opposite the treasury, and he's watching. He's watching the big crowd putting money into the temple treasury. And rich people came up. How did you know they were rich? Look at me, I'm rich. They have the bling. They push people out of the way. Little people out of the way. And they drop the money in. It makes a big racket, big, large sums of money. And everybody says, ooh, what an impressive thing. Then all of a sudden, probably at the end of the day, a poor little widow woman comes up. Does she make a big deal? Nah, she's kind of embarrassed to be there. She doesn't have a man looking out for her. She's on her own. She comes up to the front, and there she puts in 2 small copper coins, worth about a penny. I don't know about you. I hate many things in life. Let me share it with you at this time. I don't like postage stamps when they're 51 cents. Make it, round it up to the nearest nickel, like 55 cents, right? I hate pennies. I hate pennies. Where, do we have pennies in our house? Yeah. They're like under the dresser, they're in the dresser, they're on top of the dresser, they're in the washing machine, they're in my car, they're all over, pennies all over the place, right? I hate pennies, right? So they get in the way, right? Just forget it, round it up, right? When someone gives me change, I throw it back at them, the little dish there, the pennies, I don't want them around, right? It doesn't matter, they follow me home. There are pennies all over the place. Well, this woman puts in 2 copper coins that are worth about 1 penny. In other words, your gift is so small that it's an annoying gift. We have to send you like an income tax receipt for 1 cent. It's going to cost like $500 to fill out the paperwork for your little gift. In other words, by worldly standards, not only is their gift small, it's an annoying gift. It's an embarrassment. Right? So, Jesus calls his disciples together. Now, who are his disciples? I mean, you, me, yeah. He calls us together. Now, when Jesus calls his disciples, when you see that, he calls his disciples, you should say, I better pay attention to what the J-man has to say here because he's talking to me personally. Here's what he says. Truly I tell you, stop. When Jesus says, it's amen, amen in Aramaic. Truly I tell you, you should take out your yellow highlighter in your Bible and highlight this part, right? This is what Jesus really said. This is what Jesus really taught. And it's for you because you're one of his disciples. Truly I tell you, this poor widow has put in more than all of those who contribute to the treasury. Well, we can see Jesus is not a math major. Right? I mean, what kind of he would never pass the CPA degree. Right? Well, why is that? Well, can he add? The rich people put in this huge pile of money, this widow put in this annoying amount. Why? Well, he explains. So listen to what he says. For all of them have contributed out of their abundance. Do I like Jeff Bezos? Yeah, I admire him, right? At Amazon, you know? And the stock market, he had a bad week a couple weeks ago. He lost $14 billion in one day. You think you would, Mrs. Isaac's like, oh, I'm miserable, I have a bad day. Yeah, 14 billion? No, that's a bad day, right? Jeff Bezos could write out a check for a couple $1 million and drop it right now. It wouldn't, that's like 20 seconds interest on his company, on the money, right? So in other words, when and I'm glad that people that have a lot of money contribute to worthy causes, that's a good thing. But, you know, it doesn't impact his lifestyle at all, right? Right? But look at this little widow. What did she do? She has donated out of her poverty. She's given everything that she has. The 1 penny that you think is so funny, ha ha ha, an annoying little amount, well, that's her entire life savings. You got that? That's all she has, right? Well, what do you mean? She's burned all of her bridges. There's no man that's going to save her life. There's no pension fund. There's no retirement. She's putting all of her faith and trust in who? God, who will provide. Burning all the bridges. Hernando Cortez, you know who he is? He sailed from Cuba and he landed on Mexico with a couple hundred men, and he's going to conquer Mexico City, the Aztecs. And what did he do? He burned the ships that he came with. In other words, it's a one-way trip. We either win or we're all going to die. That's this woman. She's given everything she has. Jesus says, behold, the lilies of the field. The lilies of the field are not arrayed as such as Solomon. Look what God does. He provides for the birds of the air, the lilies of the field. Well, that's this woman here. It's a display, a bold and fascinating display that no one notices. No one notices a widow. We don't see these people. We don't see her 1 penny gift. We see the big money gifts, though. But God knows. God sees it all. Jesus sees it all, and he's watching there in the temple treasury. We would have missed it. We would have missed it. But Jesus saw, and he teaches us to pay attention to the little things like this. Sometimes the little things mean more than the big things, with all the noise and all the racket.